employment and unemployment, the distribution of income and wealth, saving, banking and investment, the nature and promise of capitalism and socialism. Can the present and therewith in some slight measure the prospect be understood in any applicable way? To that understanding, these pages are addressed, but not exclusively. Not everything is being measured by a stern utilitarian yardsticks. There is or should be in this matter room for enjoyment for the sake of enjoyment. The history with which I here deal is, I like to think, interesting for its own sake. There is much about it, in both its fact and its absurdity, that may challenge and delight the curious mind. I would be sorry indeed were there no such response to this page. A word must now be said on the nature and content of economic itself. Political economy or economics, said Alfred Marshall, the great University of Cambridge teacher, whose textbook was the light and sometimes the despair of many students of the college generations early in this century, is a study of mankind in the ordinary business of life. Alfred Marshall, Principle of Economics, 8th edition, London, Macmillan, 1920, Volume 1, page 1. This allows of a wide view. Not much in human behavior can be excluded as irrelevant. For practical purpose, however, the scope of inquiry and concern must be narrowed to the question most commonly asked, and we must keep in mind that these questions change greatly in urgency with the changing context and over the passing year. Central to all economic analysis and instruction is the question of what determines the price that are paid for goods and for service rendered, and how the proceeds from this economic activity are distributed, and what determines the share going to wage, interest, profit, and although less distinctly, the rent of land and other fixed and immutable objects used in production. Over most of the modern life of economics, these two subjects, the theory of value and the theory of distribution, have been the ultimate concern. It is still thought that economics came of age when these two matters were tackled systematically in the later part of the 18th century, most notably by Adam Smith. But here, at the very center of the subject, there has been formidable change with the changing context. In earliest times, as we shall presently see, neither the factors determining price nor the setting the level of wage, interest, and other distributive share were of much relevance. With production and consumption centered on the household, there was no necessity for a theory of price. With slaves, there was no compelling need for a theory of wage. In very recent time, although the change has not been conceded by the more scrupulously conventional economists, the importance of price determination and of the factors setting the distributive shares has once again declined. Price in a poor or major society are the price of grim essentials. The price of bread does much to determine how much people will eat. In a generally affluent world, by contrast, if the price of bread is high, then something else of no great significance is foregone in order to pay for it, or something else is consumed. Many purchases and much ensuring consumption are now inconsequential. So accordingly, as compared with past time, are the price charged and paid. Again, the importance of seeing matters in their context. Along with what determine price and the distributive share go the other central question. The first is how income distribute as wage, interest, profit, and rent is diffused or centered, concentrated. How equitable or inequitable is the income distribution? The explanation and rationalizations of the resulting inequality over the centuries have commanded some of the greatest, or in any case, some of the most ingenious talent of the economic profession. In nearly all of economic history, most people have been poor and a comparative few have been really rich. Accordingly, there has been a compelling need to explain why this is so, and alas, on frequent occasion, to tell why it should be so. In modern times, with rising and increasingly general affluence, the terms of this subject have greatly changed. The distribution of income remains, however, the most sensitive business with which economists deal. Next, economics is concerned with what leads to better or worse economic performance in the aggregate. The earlier question was what damaged or improved the state of trade, as it was then called. The current reference is to what depressed or stimulates economic growth and what caused fluctuation, rhythmic or otherwise, in the production of goods and services. Emerging here also is the now urgent, though relatively new, problem of why it is impossible in the modern economy to find useful employment for so many people who are willing to work. In the 18th, unemployment was scarcely discussed. Only in this century has the difficulties of achieving an adequate supply of goods given way to the far greater, far more discussed difficulty of finding adequate employment for as many people as possible in the production of goods. Along with all these questions go consideration of the institutions that are involved in economic activity, in the production and pricing of goods and services, and the distribution of the proceeds. Here enter the role of the business enterprise, great and small, and of banks and central banks, and of money in its diverse forms and functions, and the special problems of international commerce, and of government and the policies it pursues, as this bear in greater or lesser measure on all of the aforementioned process and institution. Finally, and less specifically, there is the larger political and social framework in which economic life proceeds. What of the nature and efficacy of capitalism, free enterprise, the welfare state, socialism, and communism? With these matters, it may be noted the mood of economics undergoes a rather major change. It ceased to be dispassionate, putatively scientific subject and become a theater for strongly expressed argument the most detached scholar, the most avowedly practical business executive, the politician least subject to any confining intellectual process, all react with visible, even violent emotion. Such relations this history will nonetheless seek to avoid. Reference is the yielding, not unwilling to my publisher or editor. I have subtitled this book A Critical History, and any competent history, as all will agree, involve criticism or, in any case, critical judgment. But I am here more than marginally concerned to identify error, and I might add to have the enjoyment that comes from doing so. All these questions, the solution to them that are avowed, and the course of action, public and private, that are urged are the subject matter of the history of economics. The obligatory starting point for any study of this history is, needless to say, in the classical world.